Ukraine destroyed Russian air defenses worth $4 billion. It is Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. The narrative from Kyiv is that the supposedly impenetrable shield over Russia has not just been pierced, it has been systematically dismantled, leaving the Kremlin exposed and blind. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest podcast by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover how a specific unit of Ukrainian commandos didn't just blow up missile launchers, they systematically carved safe corridors straight through to the Russian heartland. We're looking at the SBU's Alpha Group, claiming the destruction of S-400s, Book M1s, and the critical eyes of the Russian military.
We will also uncover the classified details of Operation Spiderweb, how Ukraine smuggled 117 drones inside Russian borders, launched them from hidden trucks next to nuclear-capable bombers, and why a $5,000 rental container in Chelyabinsk humiliated the Russian Aerospace Command. Stay tuned. You do not want to miss the breakdown of the new Sapsan missile and the Delta system that is changing warfare faster than NATO can keep up. Welcome to the debate. Yesterday, the Security Service of Ukraine, the SBU, dropped a report that is, well, it's making waves across every intelligence desk in NATO. They are claiming to have destroyed or disabled $4 billion worth of Russian air defense assets throughout 2025. S-400s, Book M1s, all the critical radar complexes. The number is staggering, but I'm looking at the strategic map and I see a fundamental shift in posture.
The number definitely catches the headlines, but I'm hesitant to call it a total posture shift just yet. I've spent the night with the SBU report and, cross-referencing it with the SITJ analysis. And while the financial damage to Moscow is undeniable, I think focusing on the dollar amount or even the hardware count might be bearing the lead. This doesn't look like a standard degradation of force to me. It looks like a massive failure of counterintelligence.
I see where you're going with that, I do. But I have to stick to the kinetic reality here. We aren't talking about a few lucky drone strikes. The SBU explicitly states they've carved safe corridors into the Russian heartland. I mean, by taking out the S-400 Triumph batteries, and even more importantly, by blinding the radar network, Ukraine has effectively turned the Russian rear into a front line. You can argue intelligence failure all day, but if the sky is open, the war has changed. The shield is gone.
Has it? Or has the method of the war changed? You're viewing this through a very conventional lens. Destroy the shield, strike the target. But look at the methodology that's described in the report. This wasn't a brute force suppression of enemy air defense, what we call seed using fighter jets. This was an asymmetric infiltration. So my argument is that the S-400 didn't fail because it's a bad system. It failed because the Russian command structure is just too rigid, too slow to stop a $500 drone launched from a vegetable truck 3 miles away. That is a doctrinal crisis, not just a hardware one.
Okay, let's hold that thought on the vegetable truck because we absolutely need to get into Spiderweb in a minute. It is a crazy story. But I want to anchor our listeners on why I think the hardware loss really is the dominant story here. The SBU report details the elimination of the S-400 Triumph, the S-350 Vitaz, and the S-300 complexes. But the real linchpin here is the 92N6 radar.
The gravestone radar.
Right. For those not deep in the specs, the 92N6 is the brain of the S-400 system. It's a multi-mode engagement radar, it can track ballistic targets, it guides the missiles. You can have a dozen launcher trucks sitting in a field, but if you destroy the 92N6, those launchers are just expensive trucks. They can't see, they can't lock, they can't fire. So Ukraine didn't just blow up launchers, they lobotomized the system. Without the Nebo M radars that see 600 kilometers out, Russia is effectively fighting in the dark.
I'm not disputing the lethality of blinding the radar. It's textbook kill chain disruption. But ask yourself this. Why were they able to hit a radar that is supposed to be protected by layers of short-range defense? The Security Intelligence Terrorism Journal points out that this is a classic cost imposition strategy. Ukraine isn't matching Russia missile for missile. They are trading cheap, disposable tech for strategic assets. It's this deterrence ecosystem I want to highlight. Russia is fighting a 20th century war. It's based on mass and heavy artillery. Ukraine is exploiting the centralization of the Russian military. They know that if they hit the brain, the radar, the rigid chain of command paralyzes the rest of the unit.
That paralysis is exactly what makes this a strategic checkmate, in my view. But you touched on the how, and I think that leads us directly to the most controversial part of this report, Operation Spiderweb. You mentioned intelligence failure earlier. Well, this is where your argument really has teeth.
Failure is putting it politely. Operation Spiderweb is, frankly, humiliating for the FSB.
Okay, let's break it down. Back in June of 2025, we saw these strikes on Russian air bases, Belaya, Olenya, Diaghilevo. At the time, everyone, myself included, assumed these were long-range drones flying from Ukrainian soil, traversing thousands of kilometers. This report reveals that was a complete misdirection. 117 FPV drones didn't fly over the border, they were smuggled across it.
And not just smuggled, they were assembled in country. This is the Trojan horse aspect that totally undermines the concept of a safe rear. The report details a cell operating in Chelyabinsk. They rented a warehouse. Do you know the figure on the rental agreement?
It was something ridiculously low, wasn't it?
350,000 rubles. That's roughly $5,000. So for the price of a used sedan, they secured a base of operations right under the nose of the Russian security services. They brought in components, assembled 117 drones, and then, and this is the part that just blows my mind, they launched them from movable wooden huts and concealed trailers parked on public roads.
Yeah. It reminds me of Admiral McRaven's theory of relative superiority. The idea is that a smaller force doesn't need to be stronger than the enemy everywhere, just stronger at the decisive point for a specific window of time. Usually special forces need minutes or hours. Here, Ukraine compressed that window to seconds.
Precisely. And that compression is why the S-400s were useless. Those air defense systems are looking up and out. They're scanning the horizon for cruise missiles or jets coming from Ukraine. They aren't calibrated to detect a swarm of quadcopters launching from a commercial district 2 miles away. It's like trying to stop a mosquito with a shotgun.
And look at the targets they hit with those mosquitoes: 295 Bears, 222 M3 backfires, and the 260 White Swans. These are nuclear-capable strategic bombers. They were just sitting on the tarmac, fully exposed. This validates my point about the safe corridors. If you can smuggle 117 drones into Chelyabinsk, the very concept of air defense is obsolete, because the threat is already inside the shield.
I'd push back slightly on obsolete. The air defense isn't obsolete, it's just misaligned. Russia built a shield to stop NATO jets and ballistic missiles. They built a Maginot Line in the sky. Ukraine simply walked around it, or in this case, drove a truck under it. The intelligence failure is that the FSB didn't notice a cell assembling a drone fleet next to a strategic bomber base. That implies a level of internal rut and bureaucratic blindness that, frankly, no amount of new S-500s can fix.
That internal rot is a great point, but I want to look at the hole in the shield itself again. We talked about the big strategic radars, but the SBU report highlighted another specific target that I think supports your misalignment theory: the Pantsir systems.
Ah, the goalies.
Exactly. The Pantsir S1 and S2, they're short-range cannon and missile systems. Their entire job is to protect the big S-400s from drones and cruise missiles. They are the close-in weapon system. And the report claims widespread destruction of the Pantsirs.
Which creates a cascading failure.
Right. If you take out the Pantsir, the S-400 is defenseless against these low-tier threats. It's like shooting the bodyguard so you can get to the VIP. But what struck me was the sheer speed of engagement. This wasn't just luck. This was networked.
And this is where we have to talk about Delta. You can't discuss the destruction of the Pantsirs without discussing the software that enabled it. We're seeing reports that Ukraine has reduced its sensor-to-shooter loop to 2.2 seconds. Clarify that for the listeners. 2.2 seconds from what to what?
From the moment a drone or a spotter identifies a target, let's say a Pantsir radar spinning up, to the moment artillery or strike drone is authorized and launched, 2.2 seconds.
In most NATO armies, that process can take minutes. In the Russian army, with its top-down hierarchy, where you often need a colonel's permission to return fire, it can take much, much longer.
So while the Russian operator is on the radio to command asking if that blip is a bird or a drone, the strike is already inbound. Exactly. It's a clash of industrial philosophies. We are seeing reports of Russia pulling T-62 tanks from the 1960s out of deep storage, refurbishing them with cope cages, those crude metal grills welded on top. That is industrial regression. They are solving problems with scrap metal. Meanwhile, Ukraine is integrating NATO standards with this homegrown Delta situational awareness system. It's AI-driven target prioritization. One side is welding metal, the other is coding algorithms. That's the disparity.
I'm with you on the software advantage, but I want to pivot back to the firepower, because software doesn't explode. 2025 marked the true arrival of Ukraine's sovereign deterrence. We aren't just talking about repurposed commercial drones anymore. We now have confirmation on the Sapsan.
The HIM-2.
Yes. For years, the HIM-2 Sapsan was this mythical project, a Ukrainian ballistic missile that was always in development. As of late 2025, it is operational. This is a solid fuel ballistic missile, 500-kilometer range. But the kicker is the speed, Mach 5.2.
Hypersonic, technically.
Borderline hypersonic, yeah, but fast enough that interception becomes a nightmare, especially if your radar network is already degraded. And the most important part? It's Ukrainian. There are no restrictions. They don't have to call Washington or Berlin to ask if they can hit an airfield in Rostov. They just pull the trigger.
The sovereignty of the weapon is a huge political advantage, granted. But let's not pretend the Sapsan is a silver bullet. Manufacturing ballistic missiles under constant bombardment is incredibly difficult. I'm actually more interested in the Long Neptune.
The converted anti-ship missile.
It's a fascinating adaptation. They took the missile that sank the Moskva cruiser and they modified the seeker for land attack, extending the range to 1,000 kilometers. That puts deep logistics hubs at risk. However, I have to play the dissenter here. You are listing these high-tech marvels, Sapsan, Neptune, Delta, but you're ignoring the logistical zoo.
You mean the mixed fleet?
It's a nightmare. I mean, Ukraine is operating Leopards, Abrams, Challengers, PT-91s, Soviet T-64s. Every single one of those requires different fluids, different wrenches, different track pads. The logistics chain is stretched to the breaking point. So while Russia is engaging in industrial regression, that regression has a benefit: uniformity. A T-62 part is a T-62 part. Ukraine is dealing with a fragility that a few Mach 5 missiles can't just fix.
That is a valid concern on the ground, but does it apply to the air war?
It applies to the industrial base that supports the air war. This brings up the booking system. Ukraine has had to implement these strict reservation policies to keep engineers in factories instead of sending them to the trenches. They are critically short on manpower. They need the brains to build the Sapsan and run Delta, but they also need bodies to hold the line. Russia, purely by its size, has more buffer there.
I think you're underestimating the impact of the missile-drone hybrids, though. The Polyonicia changes the cost equation completely. It's a jet-powered drone, so it's faster than the Iranian Shaheds Russia uses, but vastly cheaper than a Neptune.
It's a good middle ground, I admit.
And the Peklo, the Hell drone. These are saturation weapons. If you launch 50 Peklos and 5 Sabsans simultaneously, the Russian air defense, which we've already established is blind and missing its goalies, has to make impossible choices. This is where I argued the checkmate comes in. It's not about destroying every Russian tank, it's about making the Russian rear indefensible.
Indefensible is a strong word. I'd argue it makes the rear expensive.
But let's look at the strategic so what of this $4 billion hole. If the SBU is right and they have open safe passages, what does Russia do? If the NABO-M and Kasta-2 E2 radars are gone, they can't see low-flying cruise missiles.
They have to retreat. That's the operational reality. We're already seeing signs of it. If Balaya and Elaine's air bases are no longer safe because of Spiderweb and these new missiles, Russia has to move its strategic bombers further east, maybe to the Arctic coast or deep into Siberia.
Which sounds like a solution for them, until you do the math on flight times.
Exactly. If a 295 Bear has to fly 5 hours from the Arctic just to reach its launch point and then 5 hours back, You are putting 10 hours of stress on an airframe that was built in the 1980s. These planes are old metal. They fatigue, engines wear out. By forcing them to fly double the distance for every mission, Ukraine is grinding down the Russian Air Force through attrition without firing a single shot.
That is a subtle form of destruction. You aren't blowing up the plane, you're aging it to death.
It's patrician of capability. And unlike tanks, Russia cannot build new Tu-95s. Once those airframes crack, they are gone forever. This is where the long game favors Ukraine, provided they can keep their own production lines running.
And just to return to the $4 billion figure, we agree that's conservative?
Oh, highly conservative. We are talking about the hardware cost, but you can't just go to Amazon and order a 92N6 radar. These are specialized systems that take 18 to 24 months to build. And that was before Western sanctions choked off the supply of high-end microchips. The replacement timeline for these assets is likely 2028 or 2029.
If they can replace them at all, they might have to strip defenses from the Chinese border or the Arctic to plug the gaps in Ukraine, which creates a whole new set of geopolitical vulnerabilities.
It forces the Kremlin into a shell game. Do you expose St. Petersburg to protect Rostov? Do you expose the nuclear silos to protect the front line? There are no good answers left for them.
That really illustrates the whole blinded bear concept. They're flailing. But let's bring this back to the Polyancia for a second. We talked about it being a hybrid, but the significance is that it was developed during the war.
That is an important distinction. Most nations develop weapons in peacetime. Ukraine is iterating in real time. The SBU report mentions that the range of the Polyancia has increased by 15% just in the last 6 months of 2025. That feedback loop, from the battlefield to the engineers and back, is something Russia is struggling to match because of that top-down bureaucracy we discussed.
It's the garage startup mentality versus the state-owned behemoth. And in 2026, the startup is winning the innovation cycle.
It is, but again, I have to point out the scale. The startup burns cash, or in this case, resources, very, very fast. The booking system for workers is a sign of that stress. Russia can afford to be inefficient because they have depth. Ukraine has to be efficient because they don't have the luxury of waste. And that's why the SBU's targeting of the radars was so critical. It was an efficient strike. They didn't try to destroy the whole army. They just poked out its eyes.
And that efficiency is what opens the door for everything else. So as we wrap this up, let's synthesize where we stand. We have the destruction of the hardware, the spiderweb infiltration, and the rise of indigenous missiles. Is this the turning point? For me, the SBU's Alpha unit has fundamentally altered the geometry of the war. By wiping out $4 billion in air defense, specifically the radar brains and the S-400s, Ukraine has turned the skies over Russia into a contested zone. And the spiderweb operation proves that distance is no longer defense. Whether it's 500 kilometers or 2,000, if the enemy can rent a warehouse next door, you are vulnerable. They have successfully blinded the bear.
I agree the geometry has shifted, but I'd frame it as a victory of evolution over mass. The technological gap is widening. Russia is regressing to Soviet-era mass and meat grinder tactics because, well, that's all they have left. Ukraine has evolved into a high-tech, networked force with the Delta system and indigenous strike capabilities. But I will offer a note of caution. The hole in the defense is real, but the zoo of equipment and the critical shortage of manpower are systemic issues that a few good airstrikes cannot solve. Ukraine has to manage that internal fragility while exploiting Russia's external blindness.
It seems we are looking at a war that has shifted from a frontline grind to a battle for the deep rear. The country that can innovate faster, Ukraine with Sapsan and Delta, is currently outmaneuvering the country relying on sheer size. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Arya, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.